It was an early release day. We had shortened lessons and left early. We sat in the school library and listened to the latest nonsense that was supposed to improve test scores in math and language arts. My science classes will suffer again, as the new plan will cut half an hour of class each week to give more time for 2 test subjects. This meeting was planned to be a very long one, and we were asked to be prepared to stay until 6 p.m. Yes, school administrators are both stupid and assholes. No teacher will be fully involved in a meeting that lasts more than 3 hours after the end of the school day on Friday. Why the hell is the administration planning such a seminar? We were to discuss proposed changes to the Bell schedule for the next school year. This sudden change was requested by Regional Superintendent George Bullock. I never loved him. About a year ago, his brother got a job at the same bank where my wife worked and became her new boss. I wouldn't have known about this if it weren't for Sharon complaining about him, calling him a selfish bastard who boasted about how he and his brother held prestigious positions. At least she complained about him until about a month ago. Shortly after the meeting started, my phone started vibrating in my pocket. I ignored it because the rules were to turn it off, and the number looked familiar, but there was no name. Whoever it was called several times and stopped. I almost answered, but I was sure that I had all the important numbers saved. Most likely, it was those annoying calls with an offer to buy our house. I just ignored it. Turning off phones was an unusual requirement because most teachers were parents and their children could call at any time. I later learned that this was a request from that same scoundrel, Mr. Bullock, who had scheduled this seminar at the last minute. About 5 minutes later, my phone rang again. I decided to look at the number. It was Cindy Wallace, one of my wife's colleagues and best friends. They didn't work in the same department. Sharon was an executive assistant for Benson Bullock, and Cindy worked in the lending department. It was a fairly large building, and they usually only saw each other during lunch or when they left work. They went to school and college together and remained close friends. Wondering why Cindy was calling me, I told my colleagues that I needed to use the restroom and walked out into the hallway. Volume, you need to call Sharon urgently. Leave the meeting right now and call her. Do it. And she hung up. Crap. Have I forgotten something? I knew for sure that this was not our anniversary. I couldn't forget it was the day after my birthday. I always said it was the best birthday present ever. In 8 years of marriage, I can honestly say that I have never forgotten an anniversary. Have I forgotten an important event or meeting? No, I always set reminders on my phone as soon as I plan something or if Sharon tells me that something is planned. I always get notifications at least a day in advance, if not sooner. I walked to the end of the corridor and went outside because the signal in the building was terrible. I called Sharon, but she didn't answer. Left a message asking for a call back and adding, "I love you." I tried again. Everything is the same. Tried about 5 times and gave up, then called Cindy back. "Tom, did you reach her?" "No. I left a message and tried 4 more times, but there was no answer." "Tom, this is very important. I need you to meet me at Beans and Things as soon as possible. Can you leave school now?" I started to feel a bad feeling. Yes, I'm already leaving. I went to the staff parking lot and was on my way when I realized I hadn't told anyone I was leaving. To hell with him. It's too important. That's when my phone rang. I was driving, so I didn't look at the number. I just pressed the car sync button to answer. I was sure it was Sharon calling back about the message I left. But to my surprise, I heard the voice of George Bullock. He was furious and demanded to know where I was. I told him I wasn't feeling well and was going home. He insisted that I turn around and return to school immediately. I don't know why, but I lied. "Of course, Mr. Bullock. I'll turn around at the next exit. I'm on the roundabout now, and there's an exit ahead. But I warn you, I will have to go straight to the toilet, and it may be unpleasant. I'll use the one away from the library. I don't want to disturb anyone if someone else needs a break too. I will return to the meeting as soon as I can." Apparently, he was satisfied with this because he muttered, "Go back and join the meeting." Of course, I had no intention of returning to the meeting because at that point I was already driving up to Beans and Things. I walked in and was about to order a large black coffee when I heard my name from the far corner. I walked up and saw two large coffees on the table. Sharon always said you preferred black and you'd need a big coffee for this conversation. I didn't like the way that sounded at all. When I sat down, I asked, "What are we talking about, Cindy?" I tried to call Sharon one more time right before I came in, and it went to voicemail again. Cindy put her hand on top of mine. "Tom, I want you to know, I didn't know in advance. Sharon told me what she was going to do right before she left for lunch. Please don't hate me for bringing bad news, but I will give you the truth, not the lies she asked me to tell you." With these words, I realized that my wife had left me. I didn't know the details, but I knew she had done something. Over the past few days, she has been less responsive in the bedroom. She started texting in the evenings while we were watching TV, which she hadn't done before, but I didn't think much of it at the time until that moment. At first, I didn't even realize that I was crying my eyes out, and that Cindy was already kneeling next to me, trying to calm me down. After a few minutes, I was able to pull myself together. I needed to find out what Cindy knew. She stood up, looked sternly at the people who were staring at us, and sat down again. Sharon and I met in college. In our second year, we attended pedagogy classes together. Sharon was a very simple girl when I first met her. We became friends and even studied together, but nothing more. I worked hard to pay for my education. My parents were both teachers, and as you know, teachers don't earn very much. I didn't have time for a personal life, and to be honest, I didn't care. That was until I came in one evening to study for a math exam. Sharon came from a fairly wealthy family, but also a very conservative one. She never dressed in a way that emphasized her appearance. She had long brown hair that she wore loose, and when she sat down, she always had to push it to the side because it was below her waist. I always thought it was cute. What greeted me at the door wasn't cute, not at all. It turned out that her friend Cindy persuaded her to undergo a transformation. Sharon warned me that I might not recognize her when I arrived at her dorm. Later, I found out that Sharon had told Cindy that she liked me, but I showed no signs of interest. That night, I lied and said I didn't think she was interested in me as anything more than a friend, and I didn't want to ruin our friendship. To be honest, she just wasn't on my radar. We were just friends, and she was just normal. But not that night. She cut her hair down to her shoulders and curled her hair so that it framed her face beautifully. She usually wore a headband so that her hair would just fall back. She also put on makeup, which is something I've never seen before. And her baggy clothes were replaced with a tight pink cashmere sweater and skinny jeans. I don't know how long I stood there with my mouth open, but her reaction to the sight of me was good enough that she didn't move long enough for my mouth to start drying up. Okay, she didn't stand still. It swayed from side to side at the waist, and I was mesmerized by breasts I didn't even know existed. Later, I found out that she was 36C. I always paid more attention to the eyes and legs, but then I couldn't take my eyes off. As I raised my eyes to look at her face, I noticed that she had the most beautiful blue eyes I had ever seen. I felt like an idiot for not noticing them sooner. I told you that I pay attention to the eyes and legs. Why I didn't notice them before, I don't know. Needless to say, I didn't get to learn much that night. And so did Sharon, but we both passed the exam the next day. I'm sure my score was due to the fact that Sharon told me that if I scored higher than her, she would treat me to a movie the following weekend. I don't remember what her gift would have been, but I never regretted studying all night after leaving her dorm. Sharon changed her major and got a degree in finance, but teaching was what I really wanted. We no longer studied together, but we still spent a lot of time together. We dated until the end of college and got married shortly after graduation. I got a job as a teacher in the same city where she started working at the bank. She got a job soon after graduating, but I had to wait a bit to see if any teaching positions opened up over the summer. After we got married, we found a house south of Raleigh. It was a short commute for both of us, but our jobs were close to each other, so we commuted together. Sometimes one of us would have a meeting or some sort of seminar, so our second car would just be an old Toyota Corolla. Nothing special, but reliable. It didn't bother me to stay at school longer to grade papers, but it was harder for her to get up early for work because school started much earlier than her banking hours. As a result, this helped her advance in her work, since her superiors considered her a dedicated employee. She never told them otherwise. I thought we had a wonderful life. We usually still had sex at least twice a week, usually 3, sometimes even 4. We tried every position we could think of. I didn't think our sex life was boring. Sharon didn't say much, but I could tell from her moans that she liked it. I knew I shouldn't expect sex every night at this point in our marriage, but after 8 years of marriage, I was confident that we had great sex and a strong marriage. We discussed the issue of children, but it was more my desire than hers. She was ready to have children, but she didn't want it as much as I did. After years of trying without success, we both signed up for fertility screenings. As the doctor said, everything was fine with me, but Sharon was told that the likelihood of her pregnancy was extremely low, almost impossible. She made a sad face, but looking back, I now think there was more relief in her eyes than sadness. I communicated normally with her parents. I thought I loved them more than they loved me, but sometimes you have to make do with what you have when it comes to your in-laws. Bill, her father, seemed to get used to me quickly, and over the past few years, Marie, her mother, had become friendlier. My parents adored Sharon. My father thought she was very beautiful, and my mother thought she was the sweetest girl in the world. After my little sister, of course. My older sister was too strong to be called sweet. My parents couldn't wait for us to give them grandchildren. This was one of the main differences between my parents and hers. Mine wanted grandchildren, Butcher's did not. Tom, if I knew something was going on, I would have told you. You understand this, don't you? Cindy has always been a good friend to both of us. I never doubted her sincerity. Of course, Cindy, I never doubted your friendship. Just please tell me what's going on. Please understand that she said she loves you more than anything in the world. She just said she was doing what she needed to do. You know that you were her first man, and she has never been with others. I didn't know this when we first had sex. I was also a virgin, but since I didn't feel any barrier, I decided that she already had experience. She later told me that she lost her virginity while riding horses at summer camp. The bleeding scared her so much that the counselors called her parents to meet her in the emergency room, and her parents took her home after being examined by a doctor. Yes, I couldn't believe her for a long time, because I had never heard that such a thing was possible, but in the end, I believed it. We had a rough couple of weeks because of that, because I thought she was lying to me when she said she had never been with someone else. Sharon invited me to have lunch with her. I agreed. I didn't notice at the time, but she saw me putting my phone in my bag, and while I was getting ready, she took it out and hid it in my desk drawer. I think because I found it when I returned to work. Instead of a phone, there was a deck of cards in my pocket with a note taped to it. I'll explain this later. Anyway, she said she wanted to get some burgers and suggested I drive. She said that you would pick her up from work later. She went to work by car. Where is our car? I interrupted. Volume, I'll get to minor details later. Just let me finish because this is really hard. She looked at me, waiting for understanding. I simply nodded. Sharon started telling me about the articles she was reading about how she only had one man, and that was you. She said that she truly loves you and wants to spend the rest of her life with you. But I still believed those articles. She said she hated Benson Bullock when he first became her boss. She told me about it every time we met for lunch. Cindy suddenly sat up straight, her face contorted in pain. She leaned forward and began to sob. What a fool I am. She said she hated Benson until about a month ago, but in the last month she hasn't said a single bad word about him. That's the same amount of time she said he was trying to spend more time with her, and he began to close the door every time she came into his office. I'm so sorry. I should have noticed something and said something. Don't blame yourself, Cindy. You couldn't know that. Please continue. In fact, I didn't want to hear any more. I felt like my world was falling apart, but I needed to know. She said that Benson suddenly changed and began to show attention to her and give her compliments. It all started gradually, but over the first week, she began to pay more and more attention to how attractive he was, how he carried himself. She told me that last Friday he invited her to a business lunch to discuss possible changes to the office. He didn't want other employees to overhear that some of them might lose their jobs before decisions were finalized. She agreed because she was starting to think he wasn't such a bad guy. Some of the girls said that they had heard rumors that he was a great lover, but no one admitted that they had been with him. Everything I heard made me furious. I jumped up, walked to the door and back. I was ready to leave, but I needed to hear the rest. When I returned to the table, Cindy poured me a glass of water. I thanked her and asked her to continue. Sharon said she never would have thought about doing anything with Benson before until Sunday. She froze and turned pale. Apparently, she was preparing to say something that was worse than anything she had already said. What happened on Sunday? Please tell me. I'm so sorry, Tom. I would consider it a miracle. This was a sign for Sharon that she needed to get this experience before it was too late. She paused and took my hands. Sharon missed her period and took a pregnancy test. You will become a father. She said she's going to take the day off after she gets back, cook your favorite dish, and then tell you she's pregnant. She hasn't done anything yet, so maybe you have time to stop her. I'm not sure congratulations are appropriate here. I don't know if I can stay with her to raise the child. Even if she hadn't done anything yet, she was planning on it. I would definitely demand a paternity test. I can't be sure that she's not lying to you either. Maybe she already slept with him and was able to free up the weekend only because she convinced you to cover up her lies. Sharon swears nothing has happened yet. That's why this weekend was so urgent. She said that if she had more time, there would be other men she would think about. She noticed how some of your friends were looking at her. She was sure she could find someone who would be careful and not make you feel humiliated. That would be wonderful. My friends would know everything too. Then I would really be a cuckold. I sat back down and motioned for her to continue. They were going to go to the family beach house of the Bullock family. She wanted me to tell you that she needed to go to a conference that a certain Denise was supposed to go to, but at the last moment she canceled her participation. Sharon said she and Benson were planning to have sex that evening. If she didn't like it, he would take her home, and she would tell you that the conference was canceled due to technical reasons. If everything went well, she would return. Would be on Sunday evening. She said Benson was going to come home so she could pack a small bag and leave you a note saying she was going to a conference. Did she plan to spend the whole weekend having sex, and you thought that I would accept it normally? She was sure that you would never know about it. She really believed that I had her back. I don't know why she thought that, because she knew full well that when Dave cheated on me, I kicked him out. She still loves you. I know this is true because she said they were going to turn off the phones after 4 o'clock in the afternoon because she knew you wouldn't be free until then. She also said that if you call and tell her you love her, like you always do when you talk to her on the phone, she won't be able to do it. That's why I tried to get you to call her so quickly. I was hoping you'd make it before she turned off the phone. Benson pulled up around then, and she ran out, got into his car, and drove away. At that moment, I realized that instead of my phone, I took a deck of cards. She taped a note to the deck. Cindy handed it to me for me to read. Cindy, I really need you to support me. If you don't do this, Tom will be heartbroken. I know you don't want to hurt Tom. I understand that I place a huge responsibility on you, but I know that you will do this for my sake. In case I'm wrong, I hid your phone number. Benson and I will both turn off our phones as soon as you find him. By this time, it will be too late to change anything. If you love Tom as much as I know you love him, you won't tell him something he can't stop. If you don't tell him, he'll never know. If I thought he could handle it, I would have told him before I left. He shouldn't know about this. I went back to the bank to pick up the phone, and that's when I called you. I had a really bad headache, and was about to pour out my now cold coffee and order something stronger when my phone rang again. Maybe it was her. I took out my phone and didn't recognize the number. Answered. Is this Thomas Marlborough? Yes. Mr. Marlborough, this is Sergeant Pike from the Sheriff's Department. Your wife was in an accident earlier today and is currently at Rika Hospital. We were able to establish her identity only recently. You should hurry. I can send an escort car if necessary. I'm not far from the hospital. I'll be there soon. I hung up and could tell by the look on Cindy's face that she had heard the entire conversation. I'll lead, she said. The beer can wait. I followed the doctor into the intensive care unit and walked into the room where Sharon was lying. I could barely recognize her. Her face was swollen and her head was completely wrapped in bandages. When she heard me, she looked up and moaned softly. I moved closer because I wasn't sure I could hear her. She said, barely audible, I'm so sorry. I really love you. I thought I had to do this. I was going to come home and love you forever. I wish you had loved me today, I sighed and turned to leave. And then the equipment began to make noise. The nurses pushed me out and the doctors gathered around her. The doctor who spoke to me earlier came out and told me that she had passed away. I was shocked. I don't know how long I stood there while the doctor tried to talk to me. I heard something, but everything seemed blurred. When I woke up, I was lying in a hospital room. It turned out that I went into shock, and the doctor gave me a sedative and placed me in a separate room. He came later and said that I could stay until the morning. I left the hospital after getting the doctor's clearance. I didn't want to do this, but I organized the delivery of my wife's body to the crematorium. I asked the doctor to do another test for me. Sharon told Cindy that she was pregnant. I wanted to confirm or deny this, and just in case, I asked to have my blood samples checked. Please do a DNA test of the fetus and compare it with my samples and the samples of the second person killed in the accident. The doctor nodded in understanding, and I left. I'll deal with her ashes later. That's when I knew I had to call Sharon's parents and let them know. I was so shocked by her betrayal that I didn't contact them right away. It was a tough call, and I decided to wait until I got home. I also needed to tell my parents. Will I be able to tell them that Sharon was pregnant when she died? I wasn't sure I could handle it. I didn't notice that anyone was calling me. Perhaps it was due to the poor signal at the hospital, but I checked my phone and saw a missed call and several messages from my director. I suddenly realized that I was walking around the parking lot looking for a car and remembered that Cindy brought me here. The hospital was close to the bank where Sharon apparently left the car, so I decided to walk there. I had just taken a few steps when I heard a car horn and saw Cindy drive up to me. When I got into the car, she started scolding me for not calling her for help. I just said that I wasn't thinking straight and just remembered that I wasn't driving. Cindy looked at me reproachfully and said, "Fasten your seat belt," and went to the bank. When we passed the bank, I asked what was going on. "You're not fit to drive right now, and you definitely shouldn't be alone. I stopped by home to get a change of clothes. That's why I wasn't there when you were discharged." Zing, that's not necessary. Where did this come from? I never called her anything other than Cindy. Well, maybe I called her bad words behind her back a couple of times when she supported Sharon in our rare quarrels, but still. Sin? Apparently she didn't notice or didn't care because she didn't react. Tom, I think it's not just necessary, it's something I have to do. I feel responsible for not being able to stop her when she left yesterday. Cindy. This is already more common. I know how stubborn Sharon could be. You couldn't stop her. It was something that she considered important to herself, and I'm not sure that would have helped us in the long run. Even if she had changed her mind yesterday, but still believed that she needed to do it, she would have done it sooner or later, and next time the train might not get caught, and I could have killed her in another way. What? You didn't kill her. She died in an accident. Then I told her about our last conversation with Sharon. I was sure that my words caused her such a shock that her wounded body simply could not stand it. I was sure that my comment killed her. Not on purpose, but he killed her anyway. Tom, I know it seems like it now, but all the consequences were the result of her decisions. She brought this on herself. By that time, we were already approaching or rather, my house. I told Cindy that she didn't have to stay, that I could handle it. If she can pick me up tomorrow and take me to get the car, that will be enough. But she didn't listen. She took her bag and followed me inside. That evening, I received a call from my director. It seemed like the regional superintendent was furious that I had not returned to the meeting first. But then things got even worse, my director continued. George got a call and started screaming that you killed his brother. He said he was going to call the police and have you arrested and then bury you in jail. He added something about how it was all a waste of time. I left because I received a wake-up call, and then I found out that my wife had an accident and died. I hope you understand why I didn't come back and can explain it to Mr. Bullock. Tom, I'm so sorry to hear about your wife. Please take as much time as you need. I'll find a replacement for at least the next week, and then we'll see how things go. Please take care of yourself and call me whenever you want to talk. I'm ready to come to you if necessary. And let me know about any funeral arrangements for your wife. I woke up with a severe headache and pain in my arms. When I was able to open my eyes, I looked at my hands. They were bandaged, and blood was seeping out from under the bandages on my knuckles. I groaned, remembering that I had hit something, but I couldn't remember what it was. Volume, are you awake? Asked through a sobbing voice. Sharon, what's happened? Are you crying for some reason? Sorry, Tom. This is Cindy. Sharon is gone, honey. And again, there were sobs. Then everything came back to me. Well, almost everything. I still didn't understand why my hands hurt. But all the events of Friday and Saturday, before the call from the director, appeared before me again. However, strangely, I felt nothing. I wasn't sad about losing Sharon, either because of her infidelity or because she was killed by a train. I wasn't angry at her or that bastard. I was just indifferent. I turned around and saw Cindy sitting on the kitchen chair next to the bed. She was covered with a blanket. I was about to throw off the blanket and stand up when Cindy cleared her throat. I looked at her and she nodded at something below. I looked and realized that I was completely naked. I always slept naked, but I didn't remember how I ended up like that. Okay, explain what happened last night. After you read the note on the kitchen table, you became furious. You screamed, threw, and broke things. I was able to calm you down, but then you started hitting the door in the kitchen with your fists. You didn't stop until I jumped on your back. Then you just collapsed on the floor crying. I just held you until you cried. Then I washed your hands and bandaged you as best I could. You should probably see a doctor. You'll also have to replace the door. That doesn't explain why I'm lying naked. I pointed to the sheet for emphasis. After I bandaged your hands, I coaxed you upstairs to bed. I tried to put you to bed, but you insisted that you were sleeping naked and just took off your pants and underpants. You tore off your shirt and climbed into bed. Then I went downstairs, cleaned up as best I could, and brought a chair here so I could watch you all night. Well, I think you've already seen me, but can you turn away so I can get dressed? I'd better go downstairs. I don't think I can trust myself not to peek. She screamed in embarrassment and ran out the door. As I pulled on the pants, I realized that I really needed to go to the doctor. Pulling them on my sore arms was painful. I went down to the living room where Cindy was sitting on the couch. She held the note and cried again. I need to call Sharon's parents, and then I'll read this note again. I can't remember what was there. I decided to call my parents first. My father had a heart attack 2 months ago, but he gradually recovered. I talked to my mother, briefly telling her what had happened. I didn't want to upset my father too much. Both she and her father adored Sharon. The father heard the mother cry, and she handed him the phone. They both expressed their condolences and said they would pray for me. I told them that I loved them and that there was no need to come to our funeral, yet I did not yet know what the plans would be. When I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but wonder if they'd be as sympathetic when they found out the whole truth. The whole truth. This is what I myself didn't know if I could ever fully understand. I pulled myself together and dialed Sharon's parents. I haven't fully realized it yet, but they should have known. Marie answered the phone, and I asked if Bill was around. I needed to talk to both of them. Bill is around, but if you're going to ask where Sharon is, I don't know anything. I told her not to give me any details. My vision went dark with rage, and if Cindy hadn't grabbed my hands, I would have thrown the phone at the wall. I still regret what I said next, but I couldn't stop myself. I know where she is, bitch. She's in the morgue, and if you knew about her plans and didn't try to stop her, you helped her get there. I hung up and turned off the phone. She discussed her plans with her mother, and her mother either encouraged her or did not discourage her. She just admitted that she didn't want to know the details so I wouldn't find out. I didn't know if her father knew what was going on, but I expected to find out in a day or two, depending on whether they drove or flew. They lived in Florida, not far from Disney. After the children grew up, they moved to Orlando and visited the parks at least once a week. They have always been Disney fans. As I said, I immediately regretted my outburst. I turned the phone back on, and it immediately rang. It was Bill. In the background, I could hear Marie screaming and sobbing. Boy, what did you say to Marie? What did you tell her? Before I answer, Bill, did you know about Sharon's plans to cheat on me? What are you talking about? No, Sharon loves you. She wouldn't cheat on you. Well, Bill, looks like you need to discuss something with Marie. Sharon died 2 days ago. She was riding in a car with her lover when they went away for the weekend. I just told Marie that if she knew about it and didn't try to stop her, then she helped send her to the morgue. I was waiting for an answer. Bill, are you still here? Are you serious? Is Sharon dead? I heard Marie screaming and sobbing again in the background. Yes, Bill. It seems that Sharon, since she has never been with anyone but me, decided that she needed to try another man. On the way out of town, their car was hit by a train. I have already arranged for her cremation. If you want to change this, let me know by tomorrow morning. I need to go. I will prepare a room if you want to stay with me. I'm sure you'll come. Call if you want to change plans. I hung up and sat next to Cindy with my head down. I should have said it all differently. No, Tom. I think you did the best you could under the circumstances. I didn't hear everything, but it sounds like Sharon's mother knew about her plans. If that's the case, she needs to understand that she helped be a part of it. Before we look at that note again, let's go get one of your cars. Which one do you need? The Mustang is better, but since Sharon was the last one to drive, I think the Corolla would be better for me. Let's go to Beans and Things. If you have the strength, I'll buy you a beer there. I'm grateful, but I think I need to be sane right now. We went and picked up the Corolla, and then, just for fun, we went and picked up the Mustang. When we got home, I asked Cindy to stay with me while I reread the note. She took out the note from where she hid it. Apparently, she hid it because she didn't want me to read it unless she was around. Most of the note was typed on a computer and printed, with a few handwritten lines at the bottom. She asked Cindy to tell the first part as her version. Thomas, Deborah was unable to go to a conference on the coast at the last minute. Benson asked me to fill in for her this morning. I don't particularly want to go, but it will be good for me. It will be good for my development. This weekend may be difficult for you, but I truly believe it will benefit both of us in the long run. I'm sorry I couldn't discuss it with you. It had to be my decision this time. Love, Sharon. Below, in Sharon's handwriting. I really love you, Tom, with all my heart. I just had to make this decision for myself. When I get back, I have great news for you. I really love you, Thomas. Please believe me. Then I realized why I was furious. If I had not found out about Benson, I would have taken this message as an apology for her going to the conference without my consent. But now, knowing the truth, I understood that she was apologizing for leaving with another man while she was sure that I would never find out. Around 9 o'clock in the evening, Bill called me back. Tom, we'll need to talk later, but for now I want to ask you to change your plans and send Sharon's body to the funeral home. We want to pay for the burial and establish a grave. We may not be able to have an open casket funeral, but at least we can do it. I understand. I'll call the funeral home in the morning. We'll talk, but if Marie really knew what was going on, I don't want to talk to her. Please respect my wishes. Have you already decided how you will arrive? If you're flying, I can pick you up from the airport. It will be a little cramped in the Corolla if you plan to stay for a long time. I can rent a minivan or borrow Cindy's car to carry my luggage. Our flight arrives at 11. You'll have to get up early, but Marie will have to put up with it. We will rent a car. We are planning to stay at a hotel and stay for a while. Don't even think about it. You can either drive a Corolla or a Mustang, I don't care. The Mustang was Sharon's favorite, and if you've already booked a hotel, cancel. You can stay with me the whole time. Depending on how things turn out, I may not be too polite to Marie, but I will at least try to be civil. Sounds like a great plan. Even the part about unfriendliness. She didn't say anything directly. I don't know if she knew for sure or just suspected, but there was something in her eyes. I'll go get ready to catch the early flight. If you can pick us up, I'll see you shortly after 11. We fly United, so I think this is the first terminal. Good night, Bill. I'll pick you up tomorrow. The next day, I arrived at Terminal 1 just as Bill and Marie were walking out the door. I pulled up right in front of them and got out to help load their luggage into Cindy's car. She had a spacious trunk. Cindy came with us, but insisted that I drive. She stayed in the front seat to keep Marie from taking it because she knew I didn't want to talk yet. We had only been driving down the highway for a couple of minutes when Billy broke the silence. Can you tell us what happened? I know it's hard, but we need to know. I sighed. Fine, but Cindy will tell part of the story because I learned about it from her. Sharon told Cindy what she was really doing, but also gave her lies that she had to pass on to me. Cindy told her part. Sharon took her out to lunch, explained that she needed to try another man, and then told the lies she wanted me to hear and made Cindy promise to lie to me. She then told me about how the phone switch happened and how she called me back as quickly as she could. I continued and talked about the call from the police and our conversation at the hospital. The police haven't come to the house yet to ask further questions, but they said it might take a day or two to give me some time. This was not a matter of urgency. I told them everything, right down to my last words to Sharon. Marie sighed sharply. I'm sorry I killed your daughter. If she had told me in advance what she was going to do, I would still be angry, but I might not have reacted so strongly. The marriage would have ended if I hadn't been able to talk her out of it, but I never wanted her to die. I really regret my words. I'm really sorry. Bill spoke at that moment. Tom, I already knew about this. Yesterday, I called the hospital and the nurse on duty spoke to me. She said Sharon was barely holding on and was almost gone by the time you entered the room. She was standing in the corner and you probably didn't notice her. She looked at Sharon's face and said that she truly believed that Sharon actually died right after she finished speaking and never heard your words. I can't say I approve of what you said, but if it had been Marie, perhaps I would have been even harsher. Marie inhaled sharply again. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Marie looking at Bill with a scared look in her eyes. I told them about how the train hit the car. They shouldn't have been at the crossing. The police still have not explained how they bypassed the barriers. The train struck Benson, and he was likely killed instantly. It is unknown how Sharon managed to survive for so long. We drove in silence for the rest of the trip. We got home, and I helped Bill carry the bags upstairs to the guest room. I told Cindy that I still wanted her to stay if she was comfortable. She replied that she would need to go back to her apartment to get some clothes, but that she would return later. I was going to take a shower and make some calls. I'll be back in the evening, talk to Sharon's parents. With that, she stood up on her tiptoes, kissed me on the cheek, and then patted me in the same place. She left, and I walked into the living room where Sharon's parents, or rather Bill and Marie, were sitting. I realized that if I was going to have any kind of relationship with them, I needed to take Sharon out of the equation. I asked them if they would like something to drink before we continued our conversation. Bill knew I had some Discovery American single malt from a local distillery. This was my favorite, but far from cheap whiskey. Marie simply asked for iced tea. I poured Bill and I 2 ounces of whiskey and brought Marie a large glass of tea. Marie, can you tell me what you knew and what you didn't know? Tom, please know that Sharon truly loved you. I started to object, but she simply raised her hand to stop me. I need to finish, Tom. If after you hear everything you don't want to talk to me anymore, I understand. She sighed and continued. Sharon always said how much she loved you. She described you as an ideal husband. She said that you always do something for her, even if you yourself have to sacrifice. I didn't know you sold your truck and bought that Corolla so she could have her Mustang. I never told you this, but her words made me realize that you truly were the perfect man for her. She needed exactly a person like you. I'm sorry I never told you that. I liked my truck, but to be honest, I didn't really need it. It wasn't that big of a sacrifice, but I let her continue. She said you were thinking about getting a part-time job to save up for your vacation. She was delighted. And then, about 3 weeks ago, one of her colleagues, not Cindy, of course, but a new girl in the department, Janet, I think. So, Janet began to reproach her for talking too enthusiastically about you. She told Sharon she had rose-colored glasses. She said that the most ideal-looking husbands are usually the ones who cheat the most, that they try to be perfect at home so that their wife doesn't suspect anything. I boiled at what I heard, but Marie let me know with her look. Let me finish. And I restrained myself. She also started telling her that men cheat almost twice as often as women, and if you haven't cheated yet, you probably will, especially when she found out that you were going to work part-time. She said it would give you the opportunity to cheat. Stupid Sharon, sorry Bill, but it was stupid, Janet said, that you were both virgins when you started dating and only had each other. Janet said it was archaic and a recipe for disaster in a modern marriage. I believed that this was what made our marriage so strong. At least that's what I thought until that Friday. Janet told her that she shouldn't push you to cheat because you're probably already doing it. She said Sharon needed to sleep with another man to understand what it was like. She kept saying that it would just be sex. It won't be an act of love. It'll just be love for you, Tom. It won't hurt your marriage if it's just sex. It'll even improve your marriage because she might learn something new to spice things up. To your bedroom. She gave her some websites that explained it all. I was furious, but Marie continued. I told Sharon that this is complete nonsense. We discussed that she really loves you, and that you really love her, and that you don't go anywhere, and you simply don't have the opportunity to change. She seemed to agree with me. She even said that she stopped talking to Janet because she was annoying. But then Marie lowered her head and lowered her voice. We didn't talk too much last week because I broke my phone and it was being repaired. Perhaps if I had called her from a landline, it could have stopped everything. She called me on Friday morning on my landline and told me she was pregnant. I was so happy for you both. She said that after she told Cindy about it on Monday, Janet overheard the conversation and took her to an empty room. Sharon said Janet knew Benson wanted to sleep with her and that he was going to the beach after lunch because he had a meeting. Sharon admitted that Benson invited her for the weekend on Monday morning. Janet told her it was a great opportunity to experiment with another man. Within a week, they would come up with an excuse so Sharon could leave. His brother worked in the school system and could distract Tom while they were away. This was the first time Sharon admitted to me that this guy was hitting on her. I swear to you, Tom, I didn't know anything about this until Friday. I wanted to believe her. Perhaps I saw the truth in her eyes and therefore decided that she was speaking honestly. I really tried to dissuade her, but she said that since she was pregnant, she needed to do it before the baby was born. She thought she wouldn't be able to do this if she had a baby waiting for her at home. She believed that this was what she needed to do and that it would only improve your marriage. Marie walked over to me and pulled me to my feet so she could look me in the eyes, even though she had to lift her head. Tom, Sharon tried to give me information about where she would go in case of an emergency. She said she and Benson agreed to a no-phones weekend. I think he suggested it because he knew that if you called, she would come home. Marie began to cry again. I waited for her to pull herself together. Tom, I told Sharon I didn't want to know where she was going because I told her she wasn't going anywhere. She was supposed to come home to you this weekend to break the baby news and celebrate. She just answered, "Mom, I'll go anyway," and hung up. Then I tried to call you. I had your number on the refrigerator. The same number that I didn't recognize. It's a pity that I didn't have this number in my mobile phone, but they never used it, they only kept it for emergencies. I pulled Marie close and hugged her tightly. I'm sorry for talking to you like that, Marie. I jumped to conclusions too quickly, and I'm really sorry. Please forgive me. Bill came over and joined us in the hug. We both love you, Tom. Our stupid daughter, yes, Marie, I said it. Maybe tomorrow I won't be so angry at her, but right now I'm furious. Made a huge mistake. It cost her her life, the life of our grandson and our son-in-law. Bill, I'm still part of your family. I love you both. I won't leave you. But now I think I need to be alone. I'll take a shower and go to bed. Tomorrow I'll probably talk to the police and maybe get some more information from the hospital. I put Cindy's things in one guest room. The other room has a double bed. You will be more comfortable there. You won't be alone, Tom. Cindy snuck in here while we were talking, and I'm pretty sure she's in your bedroom. Bill, I just lost my wife, your daughter. I'm not ready for this. Marie chimed in. That's not what he meant. We've known Cindy for a long time. She loves you more than you can imagine. Right now, you need someone to be there to support you. I know Cindy well enough to know that she won't take advantage of your emotional state. You also have to understand that she just lost her best friend. And that's exactly what happened. There was no sex, no kissing, just hugs, comfort in grief. I didn't even care that Bill and Marie were in the next room. Sex was not on our minds. Monday morning, I woke up alone. No, I didn't smell bacon frying. It turned out that Cindy had to go back to work for a few hours, but then she was going to take the rest of the week off. Bill left a note that he and Marie were going to the funeral home and the next day cabins in a cafe. I toasted my bagel and spread cream cheese on it. Then I remembered that I hadn't set the coffee maker on the timer like I usually do, so I just poured myself a glass of orange juice. At that moment, the doorbell rang. I opened the door wearing only my robe. It was the deputy sheriff from the hospital, Sergeant Pike. I invited him in and went to put on the coffee. Mr. Marlborough, I would like to discuss with you what we know and share information that I think will be useful to you. The traffic lights and barriers at the crossing did not work. There are many trees around, which limits visibility. That's why warning lights and barriers were installed at this crossing. We don't know if the driver saw the train and tried to get through because the barriers weren't down, or if he thought that if they weren't down, he had time to cross the crossing. We'll never know. While we were reviewing paperwork before our shift, Mr. Bullock from the school system came to the station and tried to file a report against you for the murder of his brother. He walked around the site and loudly declared to everyone that his brother was dead, and that Thomas Marlborough, if he knew what had happened, would kill his brother. The teenager, who was waiting for his father's shift to end, recorded the whole thing on his phone. You know how it is with young people now. Anyway, he was going to post it, but his dad came out just in time. The guy showed the video to his father before posting it. My son, that is, this teenager, agreed to give the tape to the police and promised not to publish it for 2 weeks. From the video, we understand that Bullock deliberately arranged a long meeting on that Friday so that you would be busy and could not prevent Benson from taking your wife away. We also learned that several executives at the bank knew that Benson was trying and successfully courting female employees. Although the company had a moral character clause, it was difficult to enforce unless the women complained or there was evidence. We believe that between them being together in the accident and the testimony of your friend from the hospital, this may help you." I couldn't process it all at once, so Pike continued. "Firstly, the barriers and signal lights at the crossing where the accident occurred did not work. This was known a month ago, but no one fixed it. I'm not telling you what to do, but any other person might suggest you file a wrongful death lawsuit against the railroad company, if at all possible. Secondly, you can file a lawsuit against the bank for not applying the moral code. Third, you can file a civil suit against George Bullock. Apparently, his brother asked him to come up with a way to distract you and stop your wife from stopping you. I'm sure the school system will want to settle the case to avoid a scandal." It was too much to process. I said goodbye to the officer and was getting ready to pour myself another cup of coffee when the phone rang. I don't remember everything I was told, but the call was to inform me that Sharon was indeed pregnant at the time of the accident, and the DNA test results showed that I was the father. I was still standing in the kitchen sobbing when Cindy returned. I had my coffee cup in one hand and my phone in the other, and she couldn't get me to let go. My knuckles were white and I was staggering, almost unconscious, when she found me. I don't know how long I stood there, but my coffee was already cold when Cindy finally returned. Cindy later said that she screamed and splashed water on me, but I did not react. I only reacted when she slapped me. I dropped my cup and phone and fell backwards. Luckily, I was next to the only remaining chair, and she sat me down on it. Through my tears, I was able to say, "The baby was mine." When I calmed down, I realized that I needed to call my mom and tell her everything. I called, and fortunately, my mother was alone. I told her the facts about Sharon's death. I told her that's why I didn't do the funeral. I didn't mention that Sharon was pregnant. I don't think I could bear to add her grief to mine. In the days that followed, Cindy stayed with me every night. My father-in-law and mother-in-law also stayed and never discussed our bedroom routine. I felt no grief for Sharon, only for my unborn child. I named her Lucy. I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl, but it seemed like the right name. I agreed to release Sharon's body to my parents so they could hold a memorial service. I didn't want to go, but I went out of respect for my father-in-law and mother-in-law. There were few people there, probably because the story of her intention to cheat had become known thanks to news of the accident. I didn't leak this information. No, it wasn't me. Maybe I held a separate memorial service for Lucy. There were even fewer people there because I only invited Cindy, Bill, and Marie. I asked Cindy to wait for me in the car. I found out where this Benson was buried. I didn't even want to say his name. I drank an extra cup of coffee this morning to prepare for this moment. I relieved myself directly on his grave and headstone. Cindy moved in with me a week later temporarily, she said, because her lease was up and she had nowhere to go. She forgot to renew the contract and needed housing. I offered to give her the master bedroom and move into the guest room myself, but she refused and did not offer to move there herself. Returning to teaching, spending time with Cindy, and even our late-night conversations with Bill and Marie began to lift me out of my depression. One day, as I was getting ready to leave school, Marie called me. She wanted to talk to me when I got home. Looks like Bill has gone to the store and will be gone for a few hours. She asked me to go around the house and meet her on the terrace. When I got there, Marie took my hand and said, "Come on, let's walk a little." We went for a walk around the neighborhood. "Tom, I need to tell you something that you should have understood by now, but like any man, you yourself did not realize it. So someone needs to explain this to you. Cindy loves you, son." "I know. She has been a good friend all these years. I couldn't have done it all without her." "No, Tom. She loves you. I've suspected this for years. She and Sharon were friends before they met you. They often talked about you after you started studying together. I think Cindy loved you back then. I always saw something in her eyes. Now I see it again." I didn't immediately understand what she meant and asked, "What? You mean she's always been my friend and you think she—" "No, Tom," Marie interrupted. "I don't think, I know. She has loved you for a very long time. She may have hidden her feelings when she saw how much you loved Sharon, but her love for you never faded. And now, after everything that happened, I'm sure that she still loves you. I know it hasn't been that long since you lost Sharon, but given the circumstances, I think it's been quite a while. I have tickets to the hockey game this Friday. You're going with Cindy. I know you're not a big hockey fan, and Cindy isn't particularly interested either, but that's not the point. You both need a distraction. Trust me, it will be worth it. And don't drink beer at the match. You don't want to miss anything important while you're on the toilet. The next morning, Bill and Marie left for home. Cindy and I still slept together, although it wasn't romantic. We just hugged each other every night. I was sure that I must have completely lost my head. I took the tickets. When I got home, Cindy was cooking dinner. I didn't expect her to agree to go because neither of us were hockey fans. But she agreed almost instantly, without even letting me finish the question. She later admitted that Marie had sent her a message before I arrived, telling her to agree to whatever I asked and to thank her later. On Friday, we both wore pants and long-sleeved shirts. We had never been to a hockey game before and didn't know if it would be cold because of the ice. We also took a blanket with us. The match was interesting. The home team was winning, so the fans were delighted. We didn't know much about the rules, so we kept asking the couple sitting next to us what was going on. Why some players were sent to the penalty box, why most players moved to one side of the ice at some point, why some players never crossed a certain line, and so on. All of this was forgotten when the Kiss Cam game began. We laughed as we watched the couples being shown on the screen. Some prepared signs in advance like, "She's my sister," or "This is my ex, but I won't give up my tickets." Others simply kissed, some passionately, some only lightly, and then they showed Cindy and me on the big screen. I looked at her and she just shrugged. I leaned over and kissed her tenderly, and the next moment I was back for a second kiss. The feeling from that first kiss was indescribable. I've never experienced anything like this with Sharon. I just knew I needed more of it. The crowd was going crazy, or maybe it was my heart. I hugged Cindy and didn't want to let go. Our new friends tapped me on the shoulder several times to tell me that the camera was no longer showing us, but I didn't care. When we finally stopped, we just sat and looked at each other. Then I collected my thoughts and said, "I think it's time for us to leave. If we leave now, we'll make it before the traffic jam." Cindy just nodded and stood up with me. We quickly walked between the seats and almost ran up the stairs to the exit. Then we realized that we should have gone down, not up, and laughing, we went back. Along the way, I bought a stuffed animal with the team mascot. "I thought you weren't a fan," Cindy was surprised. "Not a fan, but if things are going where I think they're going, I'll definitely want to keep this souvenir." Cindy giggled, and we almost ran to the car. I took the Corolla because I wasn't worried about it getting hit in the parking lot. On the way home, Cindy tried to sit closer, but I cursed the Toyota console design for not allowing it. We ended up just holding hands, except when I needed to change gears. When I tried to open the door of the house, I dropped my keys. I bent down to pick them up and saw Cindy doing that thing where women take off their bra without taking off their shirt. I quickly found the keys. Finally opening the door, I turned around to see Cindy slowly lifting her shirt. When it reached almost to my chest, something clicked in me. I lifted her onto my shoulder like a caveman, kicked the door, and it closed with a bang. I carried her straight to the bedroom. I was going to carefully put her on the bed, but then I decided to just throw her on top of her. I started tearing off my clothes, and she did the same. I froze. Whoa, I never realized before how beautiful she was. And it wasn't just because she was lying naked in front of me. Not since I fell in love with Sharon have I looked at anyone else that way. Yes, I noticed other women, but I never focused on their appearance. But Cindy was simply stunningly beautiful, and I didn't realize it until that moment. I suddenly realized that if Sharon hadn't gotten into Benson's car, I would never have gotten this chance. I felt a tear roll down my cheek, and Cindy, noticing this, misunderstood. She jumped up and hugged me tightly. Volume, sorry, we don't need to do this. It's too fast. I didn't want to rush. No, please don't apologize. I don't regret anything. I'm so happy that you and I are finally here. In this place, at this time, I just realized that this is what I was meant to do. I just realized that you and I were meant for each other. I just realized that I love you, Sin. When we entered the room, I thought we were going to have sex like animals. But this thought completely disappeared. I leaned over and kissed Cindy softly on the lips. It was a soft kiss, but full of passion. While we were kissing, I began to slowly touch her body. I slowly caressed her shoulders, then ran my hands down her back. I pulled her towards me and ran my hands down her sides. Sometimes I touched the sides of her breasts, but quickly removed my hands. Cindy moaned as we kissed. Apparently, I did everything right. I moved my hands lower and grabbed her buttocks. Cindy began to move, as if trying to get me to bring her closer to me. I decided to gently lay her down on the bed, and when she lay down, I realized for the first time in my life how beautiful she was. Then I began to notice other features of her that I had not noticed before. After I began to notice other features of her that I had not noticed before. She was wonderful. She had recently cut her beautiful brown hair so it barely reached her shoulders. She had big, deep blue eyes, a slightly upturned little nose, and a wide, charming smile that simply melted my heart. My eyes moved lower to her chest. Like Sharon, she was about 36C. She was almost identical in build to her. Sorry, but I had nothing else to compare it to. She later told me that she was glad she stopped me when I wanted to burn Sharon's things because she was already wearing her underwear. In college, they even shared clothes. Her breasts were perfect. Lying on my back, there was almost no sagging, and they felt perfect. My eyes slid even lower. She had a long, slender belly with a perfectly round belly button. Some girls have long legs and a short torso, but this was not the case with Cindy. Her legs were of average length, but in my eyes they were perfect. I raised my eyes back to her face, and she smiled at me. Like what you see, she laughed. Of course, I answered. Do you mind if I spend a little time studying? I've waited so long for this, I'll wait a little longer, she replied with a smile. I knelt down next to her. First, I kissed her tenderly again. It was a deep, passionate kiss, our tongues intertwined as if we couldn't get enough of each other. Then I gently kissed her eyebrow, her small, neat nose, and then moved to her left ear. I started kissing along her neck, moving towards her earlobe. He carefully took her love with his lips, and this instantly evoked a response from her. Cindy arched her back and moaned softly as I lightly pulled the lobe with my teeth and licked the tip with my tongue. What are you doing? I have never felt this way. My God, please don't forget to do the same with the other ear. Sharon never spoke during sex. She could moan quietly, but there were no words of encouragement. I was sure Cindy was exaggerating, but since she asked, I repeated it with the other ear. I stepped back and looked at her. I was just as shocked as she was. This never happened to Sharon. She wasn't having as much fun as I was, but Cindy seemed to be in seventh heaven. Note to self, use this technique again. If your tongue can do this to my ears, I can't imagine what it can do next. I'm sure it's not my magic tongue, but your ears that are sensitive, I chuckled. I'm ready to check it out, she answered with a smile. I started moving down, kissing her neck, then her collarbone and moving towards her left breast. She began to squirm, but apparently out of anticipation. I kissed the slope of her breast and went straight to the nipple, but instead of immediately touching it, I began to slowly describe a circle around it. This brought out a soft moan, and she tried to force my face to move towards her nipple. But I did not give in and moved to the other breast, repeating the same thing. After doing this trick on the right breast, I went back to the left, but this time I immediately targeted the nipple, pulling it slightly into my mouth. This caused an even louder moan, and she arched again, as if trying to force me to take more of her breast into my mouth. I started gently biting and sucking her nipple. Cindy was getting louder. Suck my nipple, baby. Oh God, my nipples are so sensitive like never before. I feel something I've never felt before. I lightly bit the nipple and leaned back, tugging on it. Oh my God, I'm coming. Eh. I switched to the other nipple and did the same with it, and I got the same results. Wow, I've never experienced anything like this before. I liked giving pleasure almost as much as receiving it, and now I was truly enjoying it. I brought her to orgasm twice and have not yet reached her favorite place. I was about to move on to my favorite lunch spot, but Cindy stopped me by grabbing my head. There will be time for that later, mister. And now I need you inside me. I need this unity with you. I love you, and I want our love to be complete. Who am I to refuse such an offer? I was a fairly decent size, about 6.5 inches. I rubbed the tip of my dick along her lips to lubricate it and began to slowly enter. Cindy was so tight that I had to insert it a little at a time. I moved slowly until I was fully inside. Cindy moaned softly and asked to wait a little. I love this feeling so much. My vagina is filled to the limit. I've never felt this way before. She wrapped her legs around me so tightly that I could not move. After a few seconds, she loosened her grip and said, "Now, love me." Of course, I couldn't refuse. I started to move faster. I did it pretty quickly at first, but I knew I didn't want to stop there. And then I did something that I had never done before. I went down and began to caress her with my mouth after I came inside her. She tried to stop me, but I didn't give up and just continued. The taste was a little different, but it didn't disgust me. It turned her on so much that I was able to bring her to orgasm several times. I loved oral sex, and after a while I could only feel her taste. I stayed hard and made love to her several more times during the night. We fell asleep in each other's arms and started again in the morning. The next morning, lying in bed, she timidly said that I did not have to caress her after I came inside her. One day you will do the same. You will caress me after I come inside you. You will suck our secretions from my penis. How can I ask you for this if I myself am not ready to do it for you? You didn't think it was disgusting, she asked. I was hesitant at first, but I knew I would do this for you. Besides, it seems my taste isn't as bad as some. Then I have to find out for myself. Can I tell you something that might seem a little strange? Whatever, Sin. I love this nickname. When you caressed me after you came inside me, it was an incredible turn-on for me. The fact that you were willing to do this turned me on so much. Afterwards, she gave me the best blowjob I could ever remember. Sharon did this from time to time, but never with such enthusiasm. Cindy set to work with such passion, as if it was the last time in her life. I've warned you. I warned Cindy that I was going to come, and she just looked at me and winked. She swallowed every last drop. Well, almost everything. A few drops still leaked out, but she collected them with her finger and licked everything off again. Damn, now I see why you liked it, she said. You taste just great. I only had one other man for comparison, but your taste is much better. I love you so much, Tom. Since we both got our protein fix, we decided to skip breakfast and do it again. And then we took a shower and decided to go to lunch. When we returned, Cindy asked me to sit in the living room while she made us drinks. It was only afternoon, so I didn't expect her to bring my favorite single malt, especially since it was 2 ounces. She handed me the glass and sat down next to me on the sofa. Tom, I meant what I said last night, and this morning too. But I have to say something that may make you doubt this. Please don't say anything. Let me say it all. I just ask you, don't hate me. I won't be able to live with myself if I know that I lied to you, even indirectly. I took her trembling hands in mine. Sin, say whatever you want. She sighed and continued. I've loved you since we were in college, before you started dating Sharon. When she realized that she loved you too, I decided to step back and see what would happen. At that moment, you were not in love with either of us. I always regretted that makeup and transformation. I always thought, what if I just looked the way I wanted? But then Sharon brought you to our dorm, and I decided to give her a chance first. I tried to forget you. I met Dave and married him. But I never loved him. I tried, but I couldn't. It was hard for me to make love to him as often as he wanted. I had to imagine you to get me in the mood for this. I don't know if he guessed about this or cheated on me because I wasn't attentive enough to him, but I always felt that I myself pushed him to cheat. That's why I could never hate him. I pretended to be angry, but in reality I was relieved. We discussed all our issues through lawyers because I knew that I could not play the role of an angry wife for a long time and hide it. Now that you are mine, I want you to know that you will always have me, all of me, completely. I could never give myself completely to Dave. I could never completely relax. This may sound terrible, but I'm glad Sharon released you from your marriage vows. I squeezed her hands tighter. Sin, I love you like I've never loved anyone else. I only want to be with you. Always. We went upstairs again to make love, and then we indulged in more passionate caresses. Later that night, we did it again, but this time slowly and gently. The next morning, Cindy called Marie and simply said a short, "Thank you," and hung up. Sergeant Pike gave me the business card of a very good lawyer. It turned out it was his brother, but he was really very good. We filed 3 lawsuits. The first 2 cases were settled for almost the amount we asked for. The school system, and George Bullock in particular, tried to fight the 3rd lawsuit. But when they learned that North Carolina still allowed lawsuits for alienation of affection, even against third parties who were not directly involved in the affair, but somehow interfered with the relationship, they began looking for a way out. We counterattacked by asking for an even larger amount and said that if they did not agree, the video of George confessing how he helped his brother would be made public. This quickly ended their resistance. 6 months later, we officially got married. I say officially because we actually went to court the very next week and had a private civil ceremony. We didn't want everyone to think we were in a hurry, but we couldn't wait. After the official ceremony, Cindy stopped taking birth control. A year later, Marie-Louise Marlborough came into our family. In the end, it was Marie's friend who organized that kiss cam at a hockey match. Louise was Cindy's mother. A year later, William Robert Marlborough joined us. Robert was my father. He was already 7 years old when someone first tried to call him Billy Bob. I didn't even think about it until that moment, and I groaned quietly. Cindy and I are getting ready to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. Marie is going to do a slideshow and find photos that I thought I had long ago destroyed. Dad, who is that woman in the photo with you on the beach? I saw a photo of Sharon and me. This, Marie, is the woman who introduced me to your mother. One day I thought I loved her. I won't discuss it any further, but I will always be grateful for the circumstances that led me to your mother. I didn't know what true love was until your mom went to a hockey game with me. I didn't immediately realize that Cindy was standing right behind me until I heard her voice. Tom, bring me a photo from the kiss cam. She definitely should be in this slideshow. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.